an audio-recorded story told to you by Journey Meadows. Chapter 1. The Beginning. Boston, Massachusetts, 1942. Raven! 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 Come on! My little brother's voices cut through the early morning mist, waking me from my daydreams. Until then, I'd been unaware of the task I was doing, too busy watching the mist fall, enveloping the small part of town I'd come to know as my own. It was beautiful, and I was caught in my own imagination when suddenly... Splash! My foot fell into a mud puddle. Thick, dark, oozing water spilled over the brim of my Wellington boot and soaked the interior of it. My sock, my foot, everything was sopping wet. Bother, I muttered under my breath. I hadn't been watching where I was going, too busy looking into the windows of the shops I passed. I probably should have been paying attention to my brothers, but they knew the route to school. I shouldn't even be walking them to school. I considered taking my boot off and dumping out the water. But looking ahead, I saw that Benny and Charlie, my two younger brothers, were already waiting at the stop sign ahead. They were instructed not to cross any roads without me, although I lagged behind. Benny and Charlie both looked at me, watching. I could tell they were hoping I wouldn't pour water out of my boot. I'd already made them late. It wasn't my fault I made them late. I just liked to take things at a slower pace, while my 7- and 10-year-old brother acted like little puppies, jumping from one thing to another, excited. I should look at them and appreciate their happiness. Who could still find happiness in a time like this? They could. I saw it in Benny's bright eyes. He scanned the block. We took this route every morning, but he seemed to find things that he hadn't seen before. I saw him tugging on Charlie's sleeve, then pointing at someone walking with a baby carriage. Hadn't he seen a baby carriage before? Perhaps I'd forgotten what it was like to be 7. But Charlie, he saw the baby carriage as well and started jumping up and down, clapping his hands and laughing. No doubt they were sharing some sort of inside joke. I don't understand them. But looking at them, I had to smile. They were the perfect archetypal schoolboys. Big rosy cheeks, a smattering of freckles, light complexions, shocks of white blonde hair, little button noses and big wide blue eyes. Nothing like my complexion. Nothing even remotely resembled me in them. I I had olivey skin, deep-set features. Of course, I would consider myself pretty, just not like them. I had deep, dark brown eyes to the point of almost being black. And that matched my hair, jet black wave. But looking at them, I had to smile. They were the perfect archetypal schoolboys. Big rosy cheeks, a smattering of freckles, light complexions, shocks of white blonde hair, little button noses and big wide blue. He'd always been right by my side, through everything. And believe me, we'd been through a lot. My dear sweet mother left my father just a few months after I was born. We'd come from a small town in Massachusetts and moved to Philadelphia, where we'd lived with my aunt for a while, or my mother's aunt. We lived in a great townhouse, and my mother's aunt introduced my mother to Phil. At the time, he was studying to be a doctor, and my mother was taking work wherever she could find it. Phil and my mother were an instant success. So they were married soon after, and all of us moved into a great townhouse in the Ritz of Philadelphia. It was nice, but Danny and I always were on the outside. Phil was a good man, but he would never be our father, or anything close to it. Danny remembers more than I do. He used to tell me stories. He's more like my father than anyone in the world, although I never tell him that. We're close. We have a sort of bond. It's confusing to talk about or even think about, but it's like there's something magical between us. We can look in each other's eyes and know exactly what we're thinking. Or, if I'm worried about where he is, I just picture him, and suddenly a great picture in my mind comes alive of where he might be. Often I do this now, as I lie awake wondering where on earth he'd be. According to the pictures in my mind, he was on a ship for a long while, but now he's at some sort of camp with men about his age. Sometimes the picture forms him sitting at a long, rough wooden table, eating rations from tins. Sometimes the picture shows him on a cold bedroll in a canvas tent, packed with other men. Sometimes the picture shows him walking. Still others, he's gazing off into the distance, and I want to imagine he's picturing me. Of course, this is all silly nonsense. I can't really know where Danny is. If I did, then I'd probably rush to him. Mother and Charlie, Ben, Dora, and Phil are wonderful, but I always consider Danny my true family. He's something wonderful. My true family, though, will have to wait, because right now, Mother needs me to help as much as I possibly can. Danny was called away, and of course it was a blow to everyone. There we were, living life in our gorgeous little townhouse. And before we knew it, there was a letter in the mail, and Danny was gone. I remember the day like it was yesterday. It feels like it was yesterday. Has it really been 4 months? It can't possibly have been 4 months, but it was. I remember standing on the pier. I remember seeing hundreds of other young men bidding their families goodbye. Some husbands already, kissing their wives. Some had children. There were tears. So many tears. So much sobbing. Mother didn't cry, though. She didn't cry because Phil was there. I don't like Phil. I mean, he's a fine man, but he's very happy that Danny was going. He said we should all be proud that Danny was doing the country a service. Danny was saving the nation. I said that was a load of BS, and then Phil looked at me sharply. "You know you aren't supposed to say that around your children. Around the children," he said. I rolled my eyes. I'll say what I want. Then Mother gave me a stern look. Her crystal blue eyes can be piercing when she wants them to be, although she's usually a kind little sparrow-type woman. After her look, I quieted down, and I realized we wouldn't be able to cry. We wouldn't be able to kiss Danny goodbye. We were to stand and be proud. Of course we would be proud. That was what Phil wanted. And although Mother loved Phil dearly, I think she was afraid to do anything that he didn't like. He supporting her with his job as a doctor was the best thing that had ever happened to my mother. And if we didn't have Phil, we didn't have anything. Of course we found that out just a month later, when Phil signed himself up for the draft. Idiot man. I remember him jumping home. Phil never jumps, but this time he did. His briefcase in hand, his jacket half open. He kissed my mother on the cheek like he always did, and said, Rose, I've got an idea. I am going to help out with the army." My poor mother was stricken at the thought. I remember watching her skin turn a ghostly white, but she remained calm and smiled and said, "Oh, really? That's wonderful, darling. When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow," Phil said. "I leave tomorrow, and I don't know when I'll be back." Me hugging Dora, Mother clutching Ben and Charlie, all of us racked with sobs. Upset, but she hid it well. Phil would never have guessed. "Well, darling, I want it to be a lovely surprise for us. You know how I feel about the army. I thought I'd join your dear son, and the two of us together can bring freedom." Oh. Poor Mother looked like she was hit with a rock or something much heavier. "Right, of course," she said, in her sweet, light, quiet voice. I'll pack your things then." And that's just what she did. She packed him a bag, kissed him goodbye, and we all walked down to the pier again. It was like deja vu. Only this time, Phil was leaving. So, real trouble began. And this time, after Phil got on the ship, we all cried. Mother sobbed, her pale complexion turning red and blotchy as it always did when she cried. The boys crying. Oh, why did this happen? Why was this happening? Until Phil left, my mother stayed at home, a proper housewife. When Phil left, my mother took a job. She said strictly to everyone that it was just in case. But I knew what it really meant. She didn't think Phil was coming back. I didn't think so either. She sold our big townhouse and bought us an apartment closer to the factory she'd applied for. A factory was hiring loads of women and she thought it would be a wonderful opportunity. At the same time, she told me, rather than transfer schools, she'd just pull me out. You can stay home and watch Dora and any other little children in our tenement, she said. It sounded like it was an offer, but I knew it was a command. I was to do that. Or Dora would, be left alone? We couldn't do that. My 4-year-old sister could barely put on her socks alone, let alone spend a day by herself. And I didn't ask, but I knew we couldn't afford any sort of daycare. So new life began. My mother working at the factory, my little brothers enrolled in a new school, and all of us in a tiny little apartment on the north side of Philadelphia. I missed our townhouse. The apartment was not terrible, but cramped. The bedrooms small, the walls thin. Mother hadn't bothered to bring much of our furniture. She'd sold it with the townhouse. She said it wouldn't fit in the apartment, but I knew that furniture like we had didn't come cheap, and I wasn't looking forward to going back to that last cent hell house of an apartment to watch all those little children. It was so boring. She was smart. Of course, if Danny was there, it could be fun. We didn't have Phil or Danny. I pushed Danny out of my mind. I pushed everything out of my mind and focused on the task at hand. It was my job to walk. I had to take Benny and Charlie to school. And watch Dora. Benny and Charlie. And every other tiny toddler in the whole apartment. I hurried toward them as they waited, because you see, next to the crosswalk, as Mother started spreading the word. Grab my hand. Mother was a savvy businesswoman. I had to give her Charlie, that. You too. I'm old enough to take myself. Every person on the apartment flat brought their children over to my apartment. 10. I would imagine he would be them all. In fact, I hated much rather just allow Charlie to walk Benny to school, friends, or be done with the whole bit of it. I didn't really like those things. Mother, I didn't like to be Charlie and Benny to have a guardian, fair, and I was to be their guardian. I didn't see a cent from the work I did. All right, fine. Although I said, Mother put all the tips from the women in the apartment. I'll grab you if you jump out too far. All right? Jar. I know. Labeled. Charlie said, daycare money. He hopped around. I don't know what the money was shifting his backpack and why I didn't on his shoulders. All I knew is that I couldn't have it. Backpack looked like it weighed as much as he did. What have you got in there? I asked curiously. It's my science project, Charlie said. It's filled with rocks. Oh, I said. I should have guessed. Charlie was a rock enthusiast, also a school enthusiast. I would never understand Charlie, having been, definitely not an A student. Danny wasn't a very good student either. We preferred talking and skipping school. Charlie found joy in teachers giving him an A+, or completing an assignment, or meeting new friends. Charlie was a strange boy. I watched as he skipped across the crosswalk. Benny tried to skip after him. Come on, Raven! He tugged at my hand. Let's go a little faster! I picked up my pace ever so slightly. Perhaps I had forgotten what it was like to be 7 and find joy and wonder everywhere. Should I be their salty older sister? or play games with them. The sky was gray, so I settled on salty older sister for today. That certainly didn't keep the joy from welling from the two of them. As soon as we got to the other side, Benny yanked free of my grasp. "I'll race you to the next stop sign!" he shouted to Charlie. "You got it!" Charlie said. The two took off into the crowd. I would rather they didn't. We'd come to the shopping area that we had to navigate, and the shops brimming with produce and people picking out things for the day in the morning. Soon I lost sight of my brothers. I only hoped they had the sense to stop at the next stop sign. It wasn't like I didn't care about them, and I knew that I'd be in deep trouble if I lost them. Little buggers. I pushed my way through the crowd, recognizing faces. We all passed this way every morning. It was like a bunch of friends, but we weren't friends. We just recognized each other's faces because we saw each other every day. We never spoke. There was the woman with dark hair, the dapper nanny, the grandfather, the butcher, the librarian, the single mother with her children clinging to her arms, the shopkeepers, the men in suits hurrying to work, their briefcases banging against everyone in the crowd. I winced, remembering the pain that comes from having a briefcase hit you in the shins. I'd been dumb before, and made mistakes of walking too close to those men. They don't care if they hit you with a briefcase. They're in a hurry. Unfortunately, I was in a hurry as well. I darted past them and through the crowd. Where was the next stop sign? I was focused on Danny and so much. I'd forgotten about Benny and Charlie's safety. I almost ran into a melon stand. "Watch where you're going!" a man shouted at me. "Sorry," I said quickly. "I certainly didn't mean to." I pushed through another clump of people, only to locate my brothers, standing eagerly at the next stop sign. I sighed. "Don't scare me like that," I told them as soon as I was in hearing range of them. "I'm sorry, Raven," said Charlie, "but we're already late and I really want to get the science project in on time. Don't you understand? Education is really important for our system." Benny just smiled and bounced up and down on the soles of his shoes. "Yes, I understand," I said, but I put a hand on Charlie's shoulder and looked him in the eyes. "And do you understand me? I don't want to lose you. It's my job to look after you. You hear?" "Yes, Raven." Charlie looked down at the ground and stuck out his lip ever so slightly, pretending to pout. I snorted. Charlie was used to being babied. Mother was too soft on all of her children. She hadn't been soft on Danny and I. Why should she be soft on Charlie, Benny, and Dora? I suppose I was the one that would have to give them a true bringing up. "Stop pouting," I told Charlie. He looked at me and opened his eyes wide. "Yes, that won't work. I'm upset with you because you ran into a crowd. I'm not going to let you off the hook for this, Charlie." "Yes, Raven," he said, casting his eyes downward again. Benny tugged at my sleeve. "Raven," he said, I was just following Charlie." I whipped my head around to look at the little boy. "Oh, you're no better than Charlie. You followed him. You two better stay with me. I'm the one taking you to school." "Yes, Raven," they said in unison, and I couldn't help but smile. I'm sure they would win over anyone else's heart with their little freckles and big round cheeks. They couldn't win over me, though. I'd seen how softly Mother treats them, and Phil dotes on them. If someone wasn't hard on them, they'd grow up like little spoiled brats. Well, that's what Danny used to say. And Danny used to be rough on them. He would be not too rough. Maybe I was being too rough. I was just trying to do what Danny would do. Ugh, I silently cursed myself. Now I had two sad boys, ready to cross the next crosswalk. Charlie? I tried again. Do you want to walk yourself across the crosswalk? You are a pretty big kid, so maybe you want to try? Charlie jumped up, nearly knocking his glasses off his nose. Oh, yeah, I do want to try, Raven, I really do. Okay, slowly. Why don't you take Benny's hand this time, okay? I'll hold Benny's hand? Ooh, yay! Benny jumped up and down. Go slowly, though, I instructed them, and watched as they walked in front of me over the crosswalk. I smiled. Would Danny have liked that? That would have been what Danny had done? I had to stop thinking about Danny. We made it to the front steps of their school, and I sent the two of them up together. I watched as their little blonde, shaggy heads of hair disappeared into the door. Then I turned around, glancing at my watch. Charlie, they were still 3 minutes early. They'd be fine. 3 minutes early? Oh, shoot! I realized I needed to get back to the apartment as fast as I could. Mother would be waiting to leave for work. Why couldn't I keep a better schedule? Why was I so off in my own world thinking about Danny? I raced the rest of the way home. Just my luck, halfway there it started raining, as the sky had been threatening to do all morning. Big fat drops of rain came rushing at me, like little bites of flies. It was cold, like ice, and slipped down my neck. I tried to pull up my hood on my rain jacket, but the wind just pushed it over again. I didn't have time to bother tying it. So I was half soaked by the time I made it to our apartment. I slipped in the back door. I hated going in the front lobby. Then people would look at me and be upset that I got mud on the rug, even though the apartment was dirty anyway. Lobby people. I slipped in the back door and went up the dark metal staircase to the third floor where we were located. On my way, I almost ran into Pepper, another young woman living in the apartment. What are you doing, Raven? Where are you going? I'm sorry, Pepper, I said. I didn't mean to knock you down. Well, you should watch where you're going, Raven. I have to be at the factory in 2 minutes. Oh, shoot. Pepper worked at the same factory as my mother. Have you seen Rose? Rose is my mother's name. Yeah, she's waiting for you. You better get upstairs, young lady. Right. I raced up the remaining flight of steps, only to find my mother standing at the door. Raven, she said, don't do this again. I can't be late, okay? Will you please listen to me? I know. I'm sorry, I said. Then I raced down the hall and opened our apartment door. I was met with a crying, bawling mess of toddlers. I sighed. This was my life. This was my day. I could complain about it if I wanted to, or I could suck it up, put on a smile, and deal with it. Keep calm and carry on. That's what Mother always said. I rolled my eyes. More like keep calm and babysit toddlers. Ugh. This concludes Chapter 1. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for further chapters. Bye!